Hello, my name is Anniken and welcome to my channel. In today's video I'm going to introduce a new design for Knitting Magazine. So first I will talk a little bit about this particular cardigan, and then after that I will show you how to work the stitch pattern. So the cardigan has quite an unusual stitch pattern called tuck stitch, which you may or may not be familiar with, but it is something that I would imagine most knitters haven't come across before, although it is similar to brioche, but there are a few differences. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this cardigan first, and then I will come back and show you how to actually work the stitches. So the introduction bit to this cardigan I actually filmed a few months ago when I before I posted the cardigan to Knitting Magazine. I hope you enjoyed this video, and keep watching, because after I've talked about this particular cardigan I will show you how to work this really interesting double-sided stitch pattern. I wanted to try and film a little bit of an introduction to this cardigan before I actually send the sample off. So this is about to be sent off to Knitting Magazine, so by the time you see this video, Knitting Magazine issue 227 I think it is, will have been published. I'll put all the details below, but before I send it off I wanted to give you a quick look at the cardigan, because I don't always get these garments back before the magazine is published, so I thought I would do it now while I have the chance. It's got a very interesting stitch pattern. Is a tuck stitch pattern, which I used to use a lot when I used to knit on a knitting machine. It's a very popular stitch pattern to use on a knitting machine, but I was always struggling to try and replicate it in hand knitting. On knitting machine, tuck stitches are usually worked in one color, and then a few months ago I found this book. The way my phone films means that this will actually be mirrored, so it will look like I'm holding it back to front or whatever. But it's called Tuck Stitches, Sophistication in Hand Knitting. So it's called Tuck Stitches, Sophistication in Hand Knitting, and it's by Nancy Marchand, who's very well known for her brioche knitting, and she's written books on brioche and designed loads of brioche patterns, and that's what she's probably most well known for at the moment, I think. But she's written this book on tuck stitches. Beautiful book, highly recommend it. You don't need the book to knit this pattern though. She allows designers to use the stitch patterns in her books as long as she's credited. So the stitch pattern comes from Nancy Marchand. I decided to use it on a cardigan. Now the unique thing about tuck stitch is that either the right side or the wrong side can be used as the public side. So normally we think as the right side as the public side, but in this case I want you to think about the public side and the non-public side. So the right side or the wrong side can be used as the public side, and in this cardigan I have actually decided to use the wrong side as the public side. So if I show you the swatch, because it's a bit easier, so that is the right side. Let me just make sure I'm holding it the right way up. I was holding it the wrong way up, so that's the right way up. So that's the right side of the fabric. So the fabric will look a little bit more kind of squashed as you're knitting it, because you are carrying some stitches over, which you'll see in the tutorial I'll post after this. But the way you're knitting, it kind of creates almost like a squashed stitch pattern, and as you're knitting it, you're a little bit like, I'm not sure about this, but once you've blocked it, it will open up very, very nicely. So you can see that's the right side. And that's fine, I quite like that side, but that's the wrong side, and I actually decided that I like the wrong side better. So you need to decide before you put the cardigan together what's going to be the public side. So the cardigan is knitted in one piece to the underarm, so you knit the whole of the front, whole of the back, and the whole of the other front, back and forth till you get to the underarm. Some people don't like that because they think very long rows, there's going to be a lot of purling or whatever. Because of the way this pattern works, it's on one row it's knit one, slip one, and on the next row is purl one, slip one. So you're not purling the whole row anyway, as you'll see in the tutorial that'll follow. So you knit one piece, large rectangle, tangled, you get to the underarm, and then you put the stitches for the fronts on hold, and then you work on the back. See, when you get to the underarm, you work on the back and you cast on stitches at each end for the sleeves. Hang on, you can't see that. Let's just use this side because it's easier. So when you get to the underarm, you put the stitches for the fronts on hold, and then you carry on working on the back, and you cast on some stitches at the beginning of the row. So the first row will be first row you cast on some stitches and you work to the end of the row, then you turn it, and then you cast on stitches on the other side at the beginning of the row, and then you work to the end of the row. So from here up, you work on the full width of the back and the sleeves. It means you don't have any sleeve seam here. You get an uninterrupted stitch pattern all the way across. And because this pattern has beautiful drape and it's got like a dropped shoulder, slight oversized look, it'll be quite comfortable to wear. And then when you get all the way up to the top here, you put these stitches on hold. You do the same on the other side. After you've shaped the back of the neck, you put the back of the neck stitches on hold. And then you go to the front and you do one front, and then you do the other front. Again, you cast on stitches for the sleeves like you did for the back, knit it to the top, do some V-neck shaping. So you end up with the stitches, these stitches for the front and the back, and you do a 3-needle cast off. If I have a tutorial on a 3-needle cast off, I'll link that below. I can't remember at the moment. Before you do the 3-needle cast off, you need to decide which side you want as the public side. Do you want this side as the public side, which is this side? So I decided I wanted to go for the wrong side as the public side. So that's the public side. Or you can go for the right side as the public side. So you need to decide which side you like better. If you're not sure, knit the swatch and block it so you can see what it looks like when it's blocked. You can leave the stitches for the top of the sleeves and shoulders on hold and then block the garment and then join it afterwards so you can see, make a decision after you've blocked it. But you want to hold the non-public sides together. No, start again. You want to hold the public sides together when you do the 3-needle cast off. So if you want this as the public side, you want to hold those two, the public sides together for the front and the back. That makes sense? I actually made a mistake when I knitted this. On the second front, I actually held the right side together with the wrong side. So I ended up with it all twisted and I had to undo it. So don't worry if you make a mistake. If you're not sure what you're doing, put a lifeline in before you do the 3-needle cast off, because the 3-needle cast off is very difficult to undo. And I had to undo it, and you've got at least 70 stitches depending on which size you're knitting. Before the smaller size, you've got 70 something stitches. Okay, so that's just a quick introduction to this cardigan. Oh, and when you've finished, you've joined the shoulders, you pick up the stitches all the way around the sleeve and knit an edging, and then you do the same thing for the front. So you pick up stitches, start at the bottom here, you pick up stitches all the way around, and don't worry, I've broken it down into sections for you, and then you knit the whole button band in one go. But it's all garter stitch, so it's just knit every row. And then obviously you put the buttonholes. I do a 1 row buttonhole, that's what it's called, and the pattern includes the instructions for that as well. So I hope you enjoy knitting this cardigan. As ever, if you're knitting it or any other of my patterns and you get stuck, you can always send me a message. But the main decision you have to make with this cardigan is which side you want as the public side. And now I'm actually going to follow this with a little tutorial for how to knit this stitch pattern. So I hope you enjoy this. So I'm going to show you how to do that tuck stitch pattern now. So this is my swatch. I make quite a big swatch because you get a lot more accurate measurement if you make a big swatch. So this is the swatch I knitted to measure the tension for the pattern. I've got these markers in either side. Don't know whether you can see that. And I got one here and I got one here. So that meant when I was knitting this swatch, I actually made a note of how many stitches and how many rows I had between these markers. So how many stitches were between these two markers and how many rows were between these two markers. Because it is a little bit difficult to actually count the number of stitches. It's not like stocking stitch where you can just count each stitch and it's a lot easier. This is more difficult, so just to make it easier for me to count or to measure the tension, I put some markers in, a little bit in from the sides because the edge stitches tend to get a bit distorted, and then a few rows in from the top and bottom edge. And then as long as you know how many stitches are between these markers, you can then measure it. And even if it's not 10 centimeters, that doesn't matter. If you know you've got 25 stitches and it's 12.5 centimeters, you can just do 12 divided by 12.5. No, what did I say? 25 stitches divided by 12.5 centimeters, and then multiply that by 10 to get the number of stitches per 10 centimeters. So this is one side of the fabric, this is the other. This is the one that I decided to use as the right side of the fabric because I prefer that one. I use this as the wrong side of the fabric, but you can choose whichever side you want because they're both quite attractive. So let's have a look at how to work this pattern. So this is knitted in 2 colors, so I'm going to use the grey. So on the chart I've actually put down when you're supposed to change colors. So the white squares are color 1 and the grey squares are color 2. So I'm going to knit, I'm going to just knit the first one. Should have been pearl, but I'm going to knit it because it's the edge stitch. Then I'm going to do knit 1. Okay, so the stitch pattern is knit 1, slip 1 purlwise with yarn in front. So I've done the knit 1, now I'm going to slip 1 purlwise with yarn in front. I'm going to show you how to do it continental style and English style, but I'll start with continental style. Now, normally when I do a yarn over or yarn in front, I just take the yarn over the needle like that, or take the needle behind the working yarn. So when you knit continental style, all you need to do to slip it purlwise is to, instead of physically taking the yarn to the front and then slipping the stitch purlwise, you actually just need to take the yarn behind that working yarn, slip the stitch purlwise. So you can see now that the yarn goes over this right needle and gives you a yarn over. So you can see the purple stitch and then the grey yarn over. Then I'm going to purl 1, hang on, now I'm going to knit 1, sorry, and then I'm going to slip on purlwise with the yarn in front. So I don't need to physically take the yarn to the front and slip it purlwise and take the yarn over again. I can just take the needle behind the working yarn and slip the stitch purlwise. So that's how to do it continental style. So let's look at English style. So I'm going to do yarn over, and then slip the next stitch purlwise, and then knit 1, yarn forward or yarn over, and then slip the stitch purlwise. So now when you're going to knit the next stitch, the yarn is coming from the front. So when you knit the next stitch, it gives you a yarn over that stitch. So you can see I've got the purple stitch below and the yarn over underneath. And you can see it's the same for all these stitches. So I'm going to just do one more and then knit the last stitch, and then I'm going to turn. I'm using a row counter just to keep track of what row I'm on, and then I'm going to start by knitting 1, and then I'm basically going to do the same on this row. So I'm now going back on the row, so I'm starting with I did a knit 1 to start with, then I'm slipping 1 purlwise with the yarn in front. So now I have to slip the stitch, the purple stitch and the grey yarn over. So take the needle behind the working yarn for the yarn over, and then go into that stitch purlwise. So I do the stitch and the yarn over. I'm going to purl. Yes, I'm purling, sorry, just had to look at the chart again. So into the behind the working yarn, into the stitch purlwise, so the stitch and the yarn over, slip that purlwise, and then I'm going to purl. So English style, yarn to the front, slip the next stitch and the yarn over purlwise, and then because you're purling, if you just go straight in and purl, you lose that yarn over. So you can see if I just go straight in and pull that stitch, I loose that yarn over that needle. So if you're doing it English style, just like you would when you're doing lace knitting, if you do a yarn over, you do a yarn over and then you have to take the yarn between the needles to the front again. And then you can purl the next stitch. And then you can see you end up with a second yarn over that stitch. So now because I purled the stitch, my yarn's already at the front. So I can just leave the yarn at the front. So you just make sure you slip that stitch with the yarn in front, purlwise, slip the stitch and the yarn over, and then before I purl the next stitch I have to take the yarn between the needles to purl. So you've got to think about taking the yarn to the front for the yarn over, and then take the yarn around the needle and to the front again for the purl stitch. So you've got to think of those two things as completely separate things. If you're used to lace knitting, you should be used to that if you've done lace knitting on the purl side. So I've done a purl stitch, my yarn's at the front, so as my yarn has to be at the front anyway for the next stitch, instead of taking the yarn to the back and then taking it back to the front, I can just leave it at the front, slip the next stitch purlwise, and then before I purl the next stitch I've got to go to the back between the needles to the front again, and then I can purl the next stitch. And then I'm going to, oops, hang on, have I got one more stitch? Yes. Need to tighten that a bit. So I'm going to just knit the last stitch continental style. Okay, so that's number 2. I'm going to carry the unused colour up the side, so I'm going to do 4 rows in this grey. So when I carry the colour up the side, I'm going to turn it first. What I normally do is I just twist them around each other, so I'm going to carry on instead of just knitting with the grey one and leaving the purple one hanging down. I'm going to twist it around each other so that it kind of pulls the purple one up, and that'll make it easier when I start knitting with the purple again. So let's look at row 3. So row 3, I'm just going to knit the first stitch just to keep that in garter stitch, and then first stitch of the repeat is so the row 3 is the same as row 1, so I'm going to knit 1, and then I'm going to slip that stitch purlwise with yarn in front. You can see here now that I got 2 yarn overs, so I got the purple stitch plus 2 yarn overs. So I'm going to slip it with the yarn in front, so I give it a 3rd yarn over. Knit 1, slip it with the yarn in front, so I give it a 3rd yarn over. And then I'll do the next couple English style. So I've knitted 1, so I'm going to slip the next with the yarn in front, so take the yarn to the front, slip it, then I can knit 1, and I don't need to change the yarn. I can knit the next one with the yarn in front because that gives me that yarn over that I want. You can see here I've got 3 yarn overs over that purple stitch now. Yarn forward, slip, or yarn over. Yarn forward and yarn over is basically the same thing. Knit the next one, yarn forward, slip the next one purlwise, and then I'm going to knit the last one. Okay, there we go. So you can see it's starting to look a bit funny now, because we're not knitting these purple stitches. We're adding rows on the grey stitches, but we're not adding rows on the purple stitches. It makes the fabric kind of squash a little bit. So let's go on to row 4, which is knit 1, and then again I'm going to slip that stitch purlwise with the yarn in front, and then I'm going to purl 1. So I'm going to do this continental style, Norwegian style rather. Slip the stitch purlwise with the yarn in front, so I get a yarn over. So I now got 4 yarn overs over that stitch, and it looks a bit messy, doesn't it? You kind of, when you do this for the first time, you think that can't possibly be right. So if you purl Norwegian style, like I do, I just go behind the needle into the stitch purlwise, slip it off, and then I purl the next stitch. If you purl regular continental style, then your yarn's going to be at the front if you're on the purl row, so then you can just leave the yarn at the front, slip the stitch off, and then just make sure you take the yarn back to the front. So you just got to make sure it goes over that needle from front to back, and then back to the front for you to purl. an English style, yarn forward, slip the stitch purlwise, and you're going to slip the stitch on all the yarn overs, and then purl the next one, and then I'm going to knit the last one. Okay, so I've now done 4 rows, and as you can see, this looks a bit messy. But that's correct, you're doing it correctly. If you've done brioche knitting, you may find this a little bit familiar, except for in brioche you wouldn't have 4 yarn overs stuck over your needle like that. So now we're going to go on to the purple yarn. I don't have to wrap it around the grey now because I'm ready to knit with it, so I just let the grey hang down and I pick up the purple. I'll knit the first one, and then I'm going to knit the next one, and the next one is a BRP, is the abbreviation, which is the same as what's used in brioche knitting. So if you use the brioche knitting, you should be used to the abbreviation BRP, which is brioche purl. So you're going to purl that next stitch with all the yarn overs. So you've got 4 yarn overs on that stitch now. So I'm going to do it the Venetian style first. So I go behind the working yarn into stitch purlwise, and then I purl. So it's basically purling 5 strands together. It's the stitch and all the yarn overs. So regular continental style with the yarn in front, and then I'm going to knit one, and then English style yarn to the front, purl. Oops, as you can see, I'm not that good at knitting English style. So however you normally purl, you just purl, but you just got to make sure you purl all the yarn overs, and you just got to be careful you don't miss the yarn over. So make sure you're purling all the 4 yarn overs, and then I'll knit the last one. So you can see that's starting to look a little bit like this side was before I blocked it. Let's go on to row 6. So row 6 is just a plain row. So row 6, I'm going to knit 1, purl 1. So I'll just do that quickly. And then I'll show you another repeat, because the next repeat kind of shifts over one stitch. So I'll show you that as well. Okay, I've just noticed here. Can you see I just knitted that stitch, and can you see I got that grey yarn in front of here? That meant that when I purled that stitch with all the yarn over on the previous row, I missed one. So when you miss the yarn over, it basically just falls down, and it'll just cut across your knitting like that. So I knitted that, and then I knitted it, and then I noticed it. So I'm going to undo that knit stitch, and then all I need to do is lift that. You can see here all the other yarn overs are on this side, so I just need to lift that stitch, that yarn over that strand over, so that it joins all the other yarn overs on the other side. Okay, then I can knit it again, and it is easy to do to accidentally drop one of the yarn overs, but if you just go back, you can just lift it over. One thing I will say about this stitch is that it is quite difficult when if you have to undo it. So if you make a mistake and you have to unpick, it is quite challenging. So I do recommend putting in plenty of lifelines. So I will put a link to a video below where I show you how to do a lifeline, but it's basically just a plain strand of yarn that you thread through the stitches with a sewing needle while your stitches are on the needle, and then you carry on knitting. If you're using circular needles, if you put your stitches onto the cable, you can use the sewing needle to thread a spare piece of yarn in a contrasting colour, but make it smooth and slightly thinner than the yarn you're knitting with. So thread it through, and you can leave an end hanging out either side, or you can tie the ends together, whatever you want to do. Carry on knitting, and then if you make a mistake, you can just pull your needle out, and the stitches will be sitting on your lifeline. So if we pretend that this cable is my lifeline, they would basically sit on a piece of string, piece of yarn like that, and you can put them back on your knitting needle. And if you don't make a mistake, you can just pull the lifeline out. Okay, so I've done row 6, I think. Yes. So that's the what would be the right side if row 1 was, if this is what would be the right side if odd numbered rounds were the right side, and that's what would be, that's the even numbered rows as the right side. So that was the side that I chose to have as the right side. So we've done the 2 rows in the darker color. So now we're going to go back to the lighter color again. So we'll just pick up the lighter color for row 7, and now the pattern kind of shifts over 1 stitch. So the stitches that we were knitting on the previous one, we're now going to slip. So I'll just knit the first one, and then I'm going to slip the next purlwise with the yarn over. So under the stitch, into the stitch purlwise, and slip it. It's important that you slip it purlwise, because otherwise you will be twisting it. Knit the next one. So if you slip it knitwise with the yarn in front, can you see it doesn't quite look right? For one thing, the yarn just automatically slips in front, but also it twists the stitch. So if I slip it knitwise, the stitch ends up sitting on my needle the other way around and it ends up twisted. So don't do that. Knit one, slip one, knit one, slip one purlwise, knit one, slip on purlwise, knit one, and then knit the last one. So I'm going a bit quicker now because I have already shown you all the techniques. So I'll just knit through the next few rows, just to show you what it'll look like in this yarn and when it hasn't been blocked. So I'm going to just do this row quickly. I'm purling one, I'm slipping one purlwise with the yarn in front or with the yarn over, slip on purlwise with the yarn over, slip on purlwise, knit the last one. So I'm just going to go a little bit quicker, not changing colour. I'm going to, instead of just picking up the grey yarn and leaving the purple one, I'm just twisting the grey yarn around the purple one to, it kind of lifts the purple yarn up with the grey yarn. Make sure I knit with the grey one though. Okay, so slip that purlwise with the yarn over, knit one, slip it purlwise with the yarn over, knit one, slip on purlwise with the yarn over, knit one, slip on purlwise with the yarn over, knit one, slip on purlwise with the yarn over, knit the last 2. And then row 10, gonna knit one, purl one, slip on purlwise with the yarn over, purl one, 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 knit the last one. Actually, I think we'll do. So if you're still unsure about the actual technique, go back to the beginning of the tutorial section, because I just want to do this quickly so I can show you what it looks like. So now I'm going to knit with the purple one, and if you're careful when you pick up the yarn, you can actually manage to keep them from twisting around each other. So if I pick up that purple one behind the grey one, they twist around each other. Can you see that? If I pick it up in front of the grey one, then it keeps them untwisted. So if you just keep an eye on it, you can manage to do this without your yarn getting in an almighty muddle. So I'm going to knit one. Right, let's see, row 11. So I am still doing the BRP, so I'm purling the stitch with all the 4 yarn overs. So just make sure you catch all 4 of them. Knit one, purl with all the 4 yarn overs, knit one, purl with all the 4 yarn overs, knit one, purl with all the 4 yarn overs, knit one, purl with all the 4 yarn overs, knit the last 2. And it's not really until you turn it over where you tend to see whether you've caught all the yarn overs or not. So just have a quick look so I can see there that this time I didn't accidentally miss one of the yarn overs like I did last time. So now I'm going to purl one, knit one, 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 and then I'll knit the last one. So now I've done all the 12 rows of the pattern. And this is what it looks like when it hasn't been blocked. This bit the where I knitted. So these grey bits that stick out, they're the bits that I was knitting. They kind of stick out a lot. They kind of quite a lot of texture on one side, and then on the other side you get that kind of you can see the strands, the yarn is kind of being pulled up behind the purple stitch. If I pull it out a bit, you can see it makes it look slightly lighter. You see that? So this is 12 rows, but if you compare this to 12 rows in stocking stitch in the same yarn, it would be much longer. It does squash it together, which means that you do have to do a lot more rows to get the same distance as you would in stocking stitch. So, and it does stretch a little bit and relax a bit when you block it. So this is knitted in the grey, sorry, the green is, I think it's Blue Faced Leicester and Silk. And the grey is cashmere, pure cashmere. And both the yarns are very light, and it creates a really nice texture and a really nice fabric. And if you can kind of just about see through it, probably not that easy with the background I've got. But if I hold it like that, can you see, you can just about see the white through it. This has been hanging on my notice board for a few months because I'm filming this in January. And I probably did the design in, I can't remember, it was September, October. So I'm filming this a few months after I filmed the first part of this video. And this has kept its shape quite well after I blocked it. But this design does need to be blocked. Okay. So I hope you like this pattern. It is in the new issue of Knitting Magazine. I will put all the links below and which issue of Knitting Magazine it is in, and links to the yarn. The yarn is Macintosh, and it is, the silk blend is called Fabulous, and the cashmere blend is called Calm. So I'll put the links to that below as well if you want to have a look. Beautiful, beautiful yarns, hand dyed in the UK. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that it was helpful. Let me know if you've ever tried tuck stitch before. If you've tried brioche, this shouldn't be too difficult. If you've been put off by trying brioche because it looks too difficult, then don't be put off by doing this. If you need to, practice on the swatch. If you don't want to practice with the yarn you're knitting with, you just want to find some other yarn just for practice, you can do that. But you need to knit your swatch to measure your tension in the actual yarn you're going to knit the sweater in. But you can always practice with a cheaper yarn first if you need to. It's always a good idea to practice before you start a garment, and also use the make sure you use Lifelines, and I'll put the link to my Lifeline video below as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Please leave me a comment and let me know if you've ever tried this stitch pattern before, or if you've tried tuck stitch before, if you fancy trying it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for all my subscribers. I really appreciate your support, and I will see you next time.